Be willing to stick with the issue in the long haul. It's not going to go away overnight. It's a tough issue. It impacts all of us as individuals, as professionals, so in our personal lives and our professional lives, and be willing to recognize it and be willing to deal with the trauma that your colleagues or your peers or your family members may be experiencing, and understand that it is probably the most difficult issue we have to deal with. And only when we really work together, as the Army is proposing to do through these programs, will we see the kind of change. But it won't happen overnight. We need to be patient. We need to be in this battle for the long haul.
Within the Army, we have values. And those values, as I mentioned, loyalty and duty are two of those values. And sexual assault is a violation of those values. It is our responsibility as soldiers to look after each other. It's to look after your buddy, to look after those who are peers, and to take action when you see something that could lead to sexual assault. It is also our responsibility as part of the I Am Strong campaign to intervene, to act and motivate when we do see situations that could lead to sexual assault.
If soldiers are to be part of the future of the Army, the first thing they need to realize is that sexual harassment and assault is a deeply moral issue, that this is repugnant to the values that the Army stands for. So that awareness will really eradicate much of the behavior that we see in the Army today. The second is they need to bring new skills to bear. If the typical soldier brings in a different set of interpersonal skills, a better way of relating to people, a better way of holding peers and colleagues accountable, then we'll see an entirely different culture in the future of the Army.
That sexual assault is something that happens, unfortunately, to more people than we would like to know, and it happens to men, not just women. There's more than 6 times as many men in the military as women, and that means in terms of actual numbers, there's almost as many men being sexually assaulted as women. And that if you're a guy who's had this happen to you, it doesn't mean you're less of a man, it doesn't mean that you're less of a soldier. This is something that people can help you through.
The message I would share with today's soldiers is be yourself. Don't let your peer culture bully you, influence you into thinking and saying things you don't really believe. Stand up for what you really believe in. And if that means that you may be unpopular, I think you've got to figure out whether, that balance between being popular and being true to yourself. Because I sincerely believe that, in fact, the vast majority of people will be horrified with the behaviors that lead to sexual assault, but they remain silent. And what you've got to do is you've got to have, in one sense, the courage to stand up to your friends, to be able to speak up in a conversation that you don't like the direction in which it's going. And you've got to have the strength to be able to take that contrary voice. And so I would say to soldiers, be yourself and be true to your own values.
We have responsibility to each other. Men have responsibility to women, to other men. Women have responsibility to women, to men. I mean, we all have responsibility to each other. And in the case of sexual assault, I think a lot of men in particular think that if they themselves aren't enacting those criminal behaviors, that somehow it's not their issue, it's not their problem. And a lot of guys will say, hey, no, it's not my issue. And they'll take a step back. But the message that SHARP is presenting, and I'm certainly consistent with my work, is that this is all of our problems, and if you're a man and you yourself are not abusive to women or to other men, but you remain silent in the face of your fellow men's, whether it's a soldier or another man's behavior, then your silence is a form of consent and complicity in his enactment of that bad or even criminal behavior. And so the message, I think, is don't be silent. When you're in a position to interrupt abusive behavior, you do it. It takes strength, it takes courage, it takes leadership. But what is the Army about? I mean, there's strength and courage and leadership on a daily basis in the Army, and that's taught and reinforced. But this is another area where it needs to be applied. The other related piece is there's a continuum of behaviors. When talking about sexual assault, that's one end of the continuum, when you're actually perpetrating a sexual assault or experiencing it. There's a whole continuum of behaviors that leads to that. And one of the messages that I am sharing with soldiers and others is that men need to interrupt each other way before the end of that continuum. So sexist comments, making sexist comments to women or about women, men treating women as less than fully human or objectifying them in ways that are clearly problematic. It's something that other guys should check them on, should call them on, battle buddies need to check their battle buddy. If your boy is being abusive in some way, verbally or some other way, mistreating women or talking about girls and women in ways that are disrespectful, confronting him or interrupting him is one of the things that we need to do to prevent sexual assault. It's not just at the point of attack when we need some guy to jump in and save the woman. It's not like that. It's a much more organic process of how you be a responsible member of the Army, man or woman. And again, this is not quantum physics. This is not really that complicated, but we do need more leadership, both from men and women, soldiers and civilians.
I think the core message is that sexual violence of any type, sexual harassment of any type, is, as all of the senior leaders here at this summit have been articulating very well and very vehemently, that those behaviors and even the attitudes that underlie those behaviors conflict and contradict the core values of this Army. And it is really the responsibility of every soldier, male and female, in this Army to do everything possible to, as the message is, intervene and act and be motivated, motivate others to intervene and act when you experience or you witness any kind of sexual harassment or any behavior that might be leading to a sexual assault.
Today's soldiers, I mean, I tell them, I know they're growing up in a different generation. I know a lot of, myself, older, and the generals older than me. We look at it from a different lens, and I know just with society, there's a lot more accepted, or I don't say accepted, but just more casual about sex and different things in society, in the media, and the commercial ads and everything. So I would tell young soldiers that, look, it's still the U.S. Army, and you got to leave some of that stuff at home, and you really got to look after your soldiers, especially our female soldiers. They're part of the team. We can't get anything done without them, and it's going to take male soldiers really stepping up to the plate to fix this problem, and I think they can do it. They really can do it. Just don't give up. I mean, don't think it's going to, we just learned today, it's not going to happen overnight, but it shouldn't take forever. I mean, I challenge the leadership, the DA leadership, even the president, all just the top executive. Go ahead, spend the money, spend the time, because this is a crime that needs to be eliminated, not only just from the Army, but just from our society as a whole, because, we all have a mom. We got sisters, we got aunts, and and I do focus on the female victim because that's the normal, statistically that's who it is, and just how you respect and treat all people, especially female, is an indication of your society. And if we're going to let this continue in our Army, continue in our nation, we got to kind of look at ourselves as in the mirror of what type of Army, what type of nation are we.
That I believe in you, that I believe in what they're doing, and that I have tremendous respect for them putting their lives on the line for my country. And that I think that sometimes we think of leadership and sacrifice as those very big, heroic things that we do, and I'm going to ask them to do the small stuff, which is respect one another. And by that I mean, don't use language that denigrates anyone, male, female, whatever race, whatever gender, whatever sexual orientation. That respect is not a passive thing. It's an active choice, and I feel that they do honor to all of us when they serve in that way too.
Well, a couple. One is that if you are sexually assaulted, we're going to take it seriously. We're going to believe you. We're going to take everything, we're going to take every action we can to help you, to help us understand your experience. Once we capture that experience, once we understand that experience, we're going to move forward in a very serious and aggressive investigation to try to determine, all the facts of the case, to determine, who did this if we don't already know, and if we do know who did this, to try to find other victims, other offenses, and we're going to aggressively pursue it just like we do in drug investigations, contract frauds, because what we know from our experience and from the research, that a sex offender generally doesn't just stick with one victim. They have many victims. So if you report it to us, I want you to rely on us to be able to do our job to uncover not only what happened to you, but may also what have happened to somebody else.